Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know, as we're talking college football on this channel year-round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Our college football over-under win total pods roll on today. Really fun pod. By the way, if you've missed any of them at this point, you know the drill. We're hitting on all of the big teams, over-under win totals, previews, and predictions before the season starts. By the way, week 0 is on the way. We will have a preview of Iowa State, Kansas State. Cannot wait for that, which, of course, rolls into week 1. So make sure you're subscribed. If you missed any of them, we've done most of the SEC at this point: Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Auburn, etc., Tennessee, LSU. And we've done most of the Big Ten: Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, on and on. Today, though, we got to get to the team that won the Big Ten a season ago. Yeah, we're talking Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks. Win the Big Ten, get to the college football playoff. Does not go well from there. But if you got Dan Lanning as your coach, if you're the Oregon Ducks, you do not rebuild, you reload. So let's look at this Oregon Ducks team heading into 2025. Couple things. One, listen, we spend a lot of time on some of these shows kind of rehashing what happened last season, just to kind of set a context for what you need to know. I don't know that with the Oregon Ducks you do. Bottom line is, listen, it did not end well. I don't think we should dismiss what happened those first 13 times they stepped on the field, though, right? Because this was a team coming from the Pac-12. Nobody knew what to expect. Oh, the Big Ten, it's so big. It's so tough. It's so physical. You know what Dan Lanning and the Ducks said to that? Screw that. They just walked into this league and basically smacked everybody around. The funny part is, I don't know how many people even remember this. First 2 weeks didn't go well. Struggled against Idaho to open the year. Had to survive Ashton Genty and Boise State. Then from there, though, pretty much just destroyed everybody. Go to Oregon State, get the win. Open Big Ten play, UCLA, Michigan State. Then the big one. They welcome Ohio State to Eugene, beat them. I know Ohio State fans will tell you it was a controversial pass interference call. I don't think it was controversial. Doesn't really matter. Oregon gets the win. I think, to me, what was equally as impressive is what they did once they got that win. It would have been easy to have a let up. Instead, it's the exact opposite. They fly cross country. I know nobody's hanging a banner for beating Purdue, the worst team in the Big Ten last year, but just destroyed Purdue on the road, short week, cross-country flight, and then come back and pretty much destroyed pretty much everybody else from there on out. Illinois, remember, was a 10-win team, destroyed them. They go to Michigan, win by 21 points, and it's easy to forget this. Michigan scored a late touchdown. It was even worse than that. I think, by the way, completely unrelated to anything, I think that was kind of the day that Michigan was like, okay, we have to make major change. Oregon might be the reason Bryce Underwood is a Michigan Wolverine. Another conversation for another day. Bring it up because they close out the regular season, winning at Wisconsin with that late bye. They beat Washington in the Apple Cup, not the Apple Cup, their rivalry game. Their Apple Cup is Washington State. We get that. And then they go to Indy. And listen, Penn State put up a fight, but Oregon takes the victory. Oregon wins the Big Ten title in their first year in the league. From there, again, I don't need to tell you what happened, but you lose to Ohio State. I know there's no saving grace at this point, but Ohio State, in hindsight, nobody was probably beating them. Once they got to the playoff, once they figured out, throw the darn ball to Jeremiah Smith, I don't know what there is to say. Doesn't take away from the fact that in their first season in the Big Ten, Oregon was the Big Ten champ, 13-0, only undefeated team at the end of the regular season in conference championship games. Now the question is, what's next? You lose a ton of players to the NFL, Dylan Gabriel, Tez Johnson, both offensive tackles. Here's the good thing, though. You're Oregon. You don't rebuild, you reload. So let's look ahead to the 2025 Ducks. First of all, offensively, again, I could throw out a bunch of stats at you of they did this last year, they did that last year. Bunch of new faces. Let's start at the quarterback position. After 3 years of having super experienced players, Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel make way to Dante Moore. Now, I'll say this for Dante Moore. I think it's really interesting, right? All these teams in college football, Bama with Ty Simpson, basically 0 career starts. Gunnar Stockton, one career started, ironically came in the college football playoff after playing in the SEC championship game. Arch Manning, 2 career starts, UL Monroe and Mississippi State. Only bring it up because of the fact Dante Moore has some real big-time experience, okay? Former 5-star, started in 5 games at UCLA a few years ago. Now, listen, it didn't go great. 54% completion percentage, 1,600 yards, 11 TDs, 9 interceptions. But it doesn't change the fact that in a year where virtually every big-name program is starting guys with basically no experience, Dante Moore has 5 career power conference starts under his belt. And as importantly, got to redshirt last year, sit behind Dylan Gabriel and learn from him. I thought it was a very interesting use of NIL resources, a very smart use, to be clear, of NIL resources. Bring in your backup, get him ready for this year, and I'm just fascinated to see what he's going to do. What's also interesting, he ain't going to have to do it alone, right? You can see on that screen, Mekhi Hughes should take over the running back spot, should take over the bulk of the carries. 2-time all AAC honors. They now, by the way, don't call it the AAC. They just announced like a week ago, it's only the American. Anyway, the previous AAC, first team, back-to-back years, 1,400 yards rushing, 15 TDs, just an absurd 14 games throughout his career that he has gone for over 100 yards. And then, oh, by the way, just one of the most productive backs in college football over the course of the last few seasons. Wide receiver room is interesting. Tez Johnson, gone. Trayshawn Holden, gone. Evan Stewart, hurt. But there's still plenty of talent, right? DeCorian Moore is the top-ranked wide receiver coming into college football from the high school ranks this past year. Kenyon Sadiq, I think really interesting player at the tight end position. This was a guy that made Bruce Feldman's freaks list, 24 catches, 308 yards, 2 TDs a season ago. This, by the way, after and being the backup for Terrence Ferguson. And then I think on the O-line, it's important to note, yes, you lost a ton of production. You also brought in a ton of production as well. Isaiah World, arguably the top offensive tackle in the transfer portal over the course of this past offseason. 2,300 career snaps throughout his career, viewed, as you can see on the screen, as a potential first-round pick. 6'8", 309 pounds. So you lose A.J. Cornelius, you lose Josh Connerly, a first-round pick. You bring in a potential another first-round pick out of the transfer portal. Let's keep it going. Let's talk about the defense because, again, the defense lost a ton, but here is the good news. As I've said about 4 or 5 times now, at Oregon, you don't rebuild, you reload. That is exactly what they've done, and they've got some nice building blocks as well. The big one, we all know the name. Still, after all these years, not totally sure how to pronounce it without screwing it up, but Mateo Uiagalelei coming back, all Big Ten first team a year ago, led the Big Ten in sacks with 9.5 over the course of last season, 11.5 TFLs. This guy is a monster. This guy is a potential All-American. This guy's as good as it gets, not just in the Big Ten, but in college football. Amari Washington, another player that made Bruce Feldman's freaks list, relatively untested, but should take on a bigger role. And then I think it's interesting in the middle, to kind of go Hugh Freeze here for a second. I don't know about the length of the interior of the defensive line at Oregon, but the girth is real. The girth is spectacular, and the girth is going to cause some motion in the ocean here because how about this? Terrence Green, Jericho Johnson, Tion Gray, all over 340 pounds. By the way, when Bear Alexander, a dude whose nickname is Bear, is considered, I don't want to say an afterthought, but he is one of several just monstrous dudes in the middle. I think that this could be one of the best run defenses in college football. And the great thing is, again, when Dan Lanning is your head coach, you're going to prioritize defense. You're going to prioritize the defensive line. And you got guys like Aiden Breland and Elijah Rushing who have been in the program, who are only going to get better. And those are guys that are your potential backups. As far as the linebacker spot is concerned, listen, everybody knows the big name in the middle, the baseball star who's probably the best walk-on in college football at the linebacker spot. Bryce Betcher led the team in tackles a season ago, 94 tackles, 8 TFLs, 2 sacks. Devon Jackson as well, 47 tackles, 3 TFLs, 1.5 sacks. That linebacker group is talented, and they should have an interesting group behind them in the secondary. Again, you lose a ton, but I'm just not sold that the way Oregon recruits, the drop-off is going to be that big, if at all. Dylan Tienneman, obviously, we all know, was an all Big Ten type player at Purdue, entered the portal after the firing of the head coach there, was immediately scooped up by Oregon, 104 tackles a season ago, 7 PBUs, 4.5 TFLs, was a freshman All-American 2 years ago, and the type of guy that, again, I believe can be an all Big Ten type player. Couple other interesting names in the secondary as well. I'm not worried about that secondary. I'm really not. Let's look at the schedule, because to me, schedule very interesting heading into year 2 in the Big Ten. No Ohio State, no Michigan, but there are some roadblocks and some interesting things along the way. I think as far as how things start, about as easy as you could ask for. Montana State at home, Oklahoma State in week 2. Oklahoma State, by the way, for people who maybe don't follow the Big 10, or Big 12, excuse me, if you're an Oregon fan that just isn't familiar with Oklahoma State, they have about as many transfers as anybody in college football. I've heard interviews with Mike Gundy where he kind of openly admits, like, he's got spots on his roster that he just doesn't know what to expect from guys that are going to be in starting positions. So I trust Dan Lanning takes care of business. Think it's early. The interesting cross-country flight to Chicago against Northwestern. Then you play Oregon State at home. So good news is 3 of the first 4 are at home. Bad news is what's coming in week 5. Trip to Penn State. Now, it's worth noting, Penn State, James Franklin, historically, as we know, not very good against top 10, top 5 opponents, which is where I expect Oregon to be ranked when they go to Happy Valley. That's the good news. Bad news is Penn State is legit. Played you tough in the conference championship game last year. And a couple other things that are worth noting. First off, it is already Oregon's second cross-country trip before the end of September. That is not easy. It is already announced as a night game. So this ain't going to be big noon, noon local time start. This is a 7:30 under the lights, whiteout type atmosphere. And then the other thing, Penn State actually gets a bye coming into this game, something that Oregon is not lucky enough to have. Coming out of the bye, interesting home game against Indiana. I know that Kurt Cignetti is kind of a punching bag. I think Indiana is going to be good again this year. Not saying they can come to Eugene and get the victory, just saying I think that they're not going to be a pushover. The back half of the schedule, pretty manageable, especially in October. Iowa, to me, a tough challenge as we get into November. At Iowa, always a tough place to play. USC at home, they're improved, but I mean, come on. You think Dan Lanning is going to get pushed around by USC? I don't know. I don't expect it. And then at Washington, close the year, always a tough place to play. So we'll see what happens there. Let's talk over-under win total for the Oregon Ducks. It sits at 10.5, okay? So this is the highest over-under win total in all of college football, tied at least with Ohio State, Penn State, and Notre Dame. I'll be transparent. You know, I know I feel like I'm ducking a lot of predictions in terms of the under win total. I can't pick the over here, and I don't feel confident in the under here, because the thing about Dan Lanning, last 2 years, who are the defeats to? Ryan Day, who, by the way, you beat earlier in the year, and he had 2 losses to Washington, a team that played for a national championship. So Dan Lanning doesn't lose to teams that are inferior to him. But the counter to that is, you know, to hit 10.5, you're going to have to go 11-1 or 12-0, and that includes a schedule with Penn State on the road. So if you do fall to Penn State, which is totally normal and frankly probably expected, you got to go perfect from there. Now, listen, I'll say this. I think if you're going to make a bet on Oregon, just bet them to make the playoff. Now, the odds aren't great. I looked it up before we started this. As of right now, we're recording here in mid-August. It's minus 220. So you're going to get terrible odds on it. But if you like the over, that's probably just the bet to make, because it kind of protects you if they go 10-2 if they lose that second game. If I had to make a bet on the over-under, I'd probably take over 10.5. But I mean, again, it just leaves you with such little wiggle room. Of course, if they beat Penn State, then they're probably cruising to another 12-0 regular season. Going to go ahead and stay away from this one. All right, I think that's it for this episode of College Football Betting. We really do appreciate your support. We appreciate everything you've done. If you're not subscribed to the podcast or the YouTube channel, please make sure to do so. On YouTube, you can find us on YouTube. Just search College Football Betting with Aaron Torres, separate from the Aaron Torres pod. But we've surpassed 1,000 subscribers. We appreciate your support there. Now the question is, can we get to 2,000 before the start of the year? Thank you for your support there. Also, if you're not subscribed on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to do it there as well. We really would appreciate your support. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get out of here for today's show. After this, we're going to switch gears to the Big 12. Colorado Buffaloes coming up next. No Shador, no Travis Hunter. I kind of still like the Buffs. We'll be back. Colorado next team. Appreciate your support. Subscribe, rate, review. College Football Betting with Aaron Torres.